I would like to welcome you in with the thing of the day. We could say May the 4th be with you. That's that we have that back to back in May, huh? May 4. I've got Jeff Isaak with me in studio. And so we got May 4 and May 5 are both kind of unofficial holidays, right?
They are,
May
absolutely.
4 is the Star Wars Day for all of our Star Wars fans. And then obviously May 5th is Cinco de Mayo, if you want to have that kind of celebration. But we've got other options. So I think it was Star Wars Day because now it's become official because we figured out, okay, we can put that together. One of these days, I don't know if it's one of the ones that you're on, Jeff, but one of these days is Talk Like Yoda Day. So I really hope it's when you're on the show, and then we're going to try to talk like Yoda. So that's on the table for us. But we also have orange juice, Dave Brubeck. The fact that they had a day dedicated to Dave Brubeck really got caught me off guard. And then the National Day of Reason. I don't know how we formulate that into a question for the guests, but I just like that array of things that we have. We have everything from the philosophical National Day of Reason to Dave Brubeck, and also orange juice.
See, and the thing when I hear National Day of Reason, all I can think about is Pee Wee Herman telling Francis, "Quiet, I'm listening to Reason." That's all I get out of that.
Well, see, that's also what we could do then. We could also steal from the old show and have our word of the day. That would be kind of fun.
That would be fun. As
a show staple to add to the thing of the day, we have our word of the day, and then whenever anybody says it, then we go crazy like they did on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
And I'm sure we can find some effects that have that sound. So, yeah.
I have been talking about this with Scott, having some sound effects.
Really?
Yes. We might as well have this conversation on air. But, yeah, we talked about this on Saturday when I was covering Steve's show, that it would be fun, but we would have, like, Jethro-specific sounds.
Okay.
And that would be, and some of the staples, maybe. He didn't want me to rule out some of the staples that were in the board. But I feel like that would be, and then we could do the fanfare after people say the word of the day, and we'd pick something that, like, we know is going to be said.
Okay.
In the interviews, like we'd pick, like, okay, we've got Evan Sabourin, who's he kind of does a bunch of different things, but he's going to talk some Tigers with us. He also has a Red Wings podcast, and he also is in football production as far as on the television side of things. So he's got a lot of he's a man with many hats, but we'll have him in the Tigers segment primarily. But knowing that we're going to talk Tigers with him, there are some obvious things that would come up. Mickey Jacobs will be coming on to talk about, Pistons basketball. I don't know if we'd have to pick something. It can't be like a player's name. It's like, obviously he's going to mention like Tobias Harris. We can't make it Tobias or anything, or we can't make it Scooble, for the Tigers segment. But it would be fun to make it either like an obscure name or something that we know is going to be brought up, kind of like Grit. I'm thinking kind of like Grit.
Grit would be a good one.
Yeah, like that would be a good word of the day if you're doing a Detroit sports radio show, which
Absolutely.
we're attempting to do here. We'll see how well we accomplish it. But I do still like my bingo board idea, Jeff. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show when you've been on, but I like the idea of having a show bingo board where we put things on there that are somewhat likely to be said, because I say this in almost every Tigers segment, and he's going to get mentioned again today, I assume. For whatever reason, we cannot get out of a Tigers segment without the name Hyu Lee being brought up. And this is way before he got called up to the majors. This is like starting over a year ago. All the Tigers minor league guys all love this guy. So they keep bringing up Hyu Lee. So he would be like the middle square in a baseball interview segment.
Okay.
You would think it'd be Scooble or Green.
Right.
We get interviews where we don't mention those guys at all. Hyu Lee every time.
That's fantastic.
So,
that does sound fun.
It would be fun to have like a play along with us Jethro bingo game, and then you could see if you get bingo.
Yeah.
And we'd have different things that, maybe they're like verbal tics that I have, or maybe, things that are likely to come up on the show. But you could actually have things that come up, like like when Big G's on, he likes to fire me. So like Big G fires me, that could be a square. I bother you about Lethal Weapon or something. Kept cobbling.
Yes, I did reach out to some cobblers. I haven't heard back.
After that show, Jeff did, just for the listeners that were listening during that time where we were trying to find a cobbler, Jeff did find a cobbler. So we're venturing to try to connect with him and maybe try to get him to be a sponsor of the show. So
Or
he can
actually
cobble
come
my
in.
tennis shoes.
You
Yeah.
can come in. We can discuss cobbling.
I don't have the type of shoes that get cobbled. That's the problem. I don't know what
anybody.
I don't know. Yeah,
Someone has to. He's in business.
He's in and he's thriving. I
He
think
is.
so. We got to talk with him.
thriving.
We got to talk with him. We got to pump up his business in case he becomes a sponsor. But what? So the simplest one out of the thing of the day here, Jeff, is orange juice, because we could do the favorite juice. That's kind of like the easy option. Dave Brubeck is a nice kind of off the cuff option. I don't know what we do. Favorite band, favorite jazz act,
It's gotta
favorite Dave Brubeck song. We'd really put people on the spot with that one. If they could name anything beyond Take Five, I'd be really impressed.
Right. And see again, and that's where my mind just goes whoop. If you bring up jazz or Dave Brubeck, it leads to a Seinfeld episode. Remember George, the opposite, when he's yelling at the two guys in the theater.
With the opposite, I'm trying to think
If
of
you
this
guys
one.
don't
I
stop
know.
kicking the chair, I'm going to take you outside and show you what it's like.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is a good one. Oh yeah, he's impressing the woman. Yeah,
yes,
and
he's doing the
a
complete
tough guy.
opposite of everything he's
Yeah.
ever done.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. Yeah, we could go Seinfeld for a while here. See, we need something that we can tie into Seinfeld. That would be good. We need a Seinfeld
would be
day.
trouble.
If there's a Dave Brubeck day, there's got to be a Seinfeld.
There
day,
has
right?
to be.
No offense
Absolutely.
to Mr. Brubeck and his quartet or whatever he had, quintet maybe. But then we could also do Star Wars, and we could do favorite Star Wars character. I feel like that might work.
Yeah,
Looking at our guests, I feel like that would work with the two, because both the guests are in TV.
And I'd rather do orange juice because everybody's doing Star Wars.
Yeah, we got to zig. We got to zig. Well,
Yeah.
favorite
Let's zig
shoot.
while everybody zags.
Favorite shoot a cobble. You really want to zig? I can zig with the best of them.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, we could do orange juice. I'd be curious what people would say for the Star Wars characters. I'm not real deep on that. I like the Ewoks. I saw something the other day that the Ewoks are just Care Bears that kind of like were then not really taken care of properly, and they turned into Ewoks. I liked that. I thought that was along my line of thinking. But yeah, orange juice is good because I've got an off. So what's yours? What's your favorite juice then? I've got an off the cuff answer. I've got a kind of offbeat answer for that. No surprise.
So if we're just talking specifically orange juice, I like fresh squeezed orange juice.
Oh, of course.
With a little pulp.
That's probably the right answer as far as favorite juice. But do you have a favorite juice just in general? Is orange juice your favorite juice?
No.
Okay.
No, it's got to be the pineapple mango.
See, mango's my favorite. Just pure mango.
Yeah, that's good too. I like the pineapple mango.
That's a good combo.
Yeah.
See, we're off to a good start with juice. If Evan doesn't want to answer juice, we can try to get him to talk Star Wars. See, both of these guys are kind of in the production side of television and sports, so they'll be able to roll with it here, and then we'll also have time for us to in studio. I know you were a little bummed coming in studio. I usually like that you're excited. You've been listening to
so
the
excited.
sports radio, and then
Yes.
something gets you riled up, and then now we got unfortunately some bad news on the Tigers side. So we'll talk.
Yeah, because we're all fired up. The Pistons won yesterday. The Tigers won yesterday. It was a great sports day yesterday. And then we get in today, and about a couple hours ago it broke. Ugh, it's not good.
It's amazing to me how these injuries can all be pooled together so much, because like I know we talk about injuries and we probably have more injury talk on this show than people prefer, but I do think it's important as a sports fan to understand injuries. So that's why we have Dr. Liao on the football shows, and that's why we have Dr. Williams come in and talk about internal health and how that can play, because this is all affecting that. I'm not a doctor. I only talk to these guys and try to glean what they're saying, but this is all factoring in. And yeah, when a 43-year-old Justin Verlander gets hurt early in the season, you kind of go, okay, we've kind of figured that would happen at some point in 162 games. But I mean, it's the young pitchers. You already had Job out. You already had Reese Olson declared out for the year. Then Melton goes out. That was a sneaky big loss at the beginning of the year. And then Verlander, and you go, okay, well, he's aging. Hopefully you get him back for the stretch run. But yeah, this is interesting from a bunch of standpoints with the Skubal thing, because obviously he's got, a pretty big contract negotiation to make. And it doesn't, if you're in the camp that you want to trade him, it doesn't help that at all.
See, and that's the biggest thing. I don't think we're going to pay him. I don't think we're going to pay him anyway. But if we're struggling, which, I mean, we're a game over 500, that's struggling around that trade deadline. I mean, you've got that dangling to tease everybody. That's off the table. We're talking 3 to 4 months is what I've heard from ESPN insiders. Jeff Passan said it's a 3 to 4 month recovery.
And from talking with a lot of these, usually they're on the football side, but a lot of contract experts, they usually tell me that the whole idea of like, hey, he's injured, maybe he's worth less now. It's kind of like, no, the agent's going to push for the full amount and say, hey, he's going to be back healthy. You could kind of make a counter argument and say, he's even healthier now. Yeah. Yep, he's back to 100%. He's further away from an injury because we got this one cleaned up, and so now he's even further away from it, which obviously is kind of circular reasoning. But the agent's going to argue whatever they can, and especially his agent is going to, and I mean they're going for a big deal, and he's competitive, and he's going to want a big deal because of his competitive nature too. He's gonna want to be the biggest pitcher contract and all that. But yeah, it is a bummer all the way around for the Tigers, for Skubal, of course, primarily. He wants to be out there competing, and he doesn't want to be sidelined. No, he's probably teaching himself to throw right-handed so he can get out there and throw with that arm.
Well, I mean, can he be any worse than Flaherty right now throwing right-handed?
I know, and that's the thing. They really started with a ton of depth when they had Verlander and Valdez. They got those two in the mix. Obviously, that was after we knew Olson was going to be out, in addition to Job. But they're factoring into the future, hopefully. Yep. But then Melton went out, and then I was like, okay, we're actually still okay because we still got 5 starters. And then Verlander goes out and you go, well, hey, Montero's been kind of a revelation. He's looked good as a starter. He's not lost a beat. And that was a smart decision to send him down to Toledo, and obviously he was ready. But now after that, I don't know. We're back to chaos here. We had pitching chaos, which is fun, but we're also seeing the after effects of trying to do that for a while, with Holton getting kind of burned out. Some of those guys got burned out that were leaned heavily upon.
Yeah, and we're starting again with this pitcher chaos. It is you don't want these guys worn out when come June, July. No.
Especially because what I thought was a deep bullpen hasn't necessarily worked out that way. Maybe some of the guys that I thought they were going to keep also, they didn't keep, but then some of the guys that were riding pretty high, DeJesus and Anderson, those guys were coming in with a lot of hype, and they, they have, especially DeJesus, that hasn't worked out great so far, but there's still a lot of season left. We'll see how that goes. But no Tommy Kahnle in sight. That was the one that would be on the bingo card. But
yes,
we did a lot of Tommy Kahnle talk in that time that he was. Then I just felt bad for him. Right. In the end, but okay, yeah, we're set up for our baseball segment now. This is gonna be a bunch of different things. I think Evan is a social media producer for baseball, but he does a ton of different things. He's involved in football. He's got the Red Wings podcast, so we'll be able to bounce around with him a little bit and talk about a bunch of different subjects. So we'll come back with Evan Sabourin after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. On for, I think this is now the third sport. I guess we need to get you for basketball next here, Evan. We got more Pistons to talk about. We'll have Mickey Jacobs on in a little while for that. But he keeps telling me, oh, I can cover this, and he's done it all very well. He has a Red Wings podcast that we had him on for, and he's done a lot of production work in the football world. But now we're going to talk some Tigers. Not the best timing given the news that's happened, but as you know from being on the show a few times here, Evan, we like to celebrate the thing of the day. And Jeff vetoed the standard path of the May the 4th be with you. So we're going to swerve you and ask you what your favorite juice is.
My favorite juice?
Yep. It's National Orange Juice Day.
Today's National Orange Juice Day. Wow, I did not know that.
I mean, you probably had better things to do.
Oh, boy. I mean, it probably has to be apple juice. Although, cranberry juice goes good with certain cocktails, or so maybe I'll jump to that as well here and there.
Okay, that's good. You can provide the cocktail content on the show because I can't help you on that one at all as a lifetime non-drinker. But I am familiar that there's a pairing there, especially out there with the cranberry juice. So that's good. Yeah, it has different purposes, which is nice. I know you probably thought we were going to ask you your favorite Star Wars character or something like that. We also had Dave Brubeck as an option, but we didn't know how to turn that into a question. So enough with that. But no, we're happy to have you on because I wanted to talk to you about a few things. We'll start with the Tigers, but you have such a wide array of knowledge that we'll probably wander into some other things, the production things. I wanted to, since you've done a lot of football production, wanted to kind of ask about your thoughts on the draft now that we just had that. But we'll start with the Tigers, and I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on what's been going on with them this year. It's been, I mean, man, for being a fifth through the season, I know the big news is the Scooble news, but just beyond that, they have dealt with a lot of injuries, and I don't know what it is. The injury bug tends to bite pretty hard in Detroit because the Lions have been dealing with this, and now we got the Tigers dealing with it. But we're going to see their depth, I guess, in the minor leagues here.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm coming on what was probably like the worst day of the season for Tiger fans with the Tariq Skubal news. It's kind of crazy, this Tigers team and the injuries they're having. Like you said, what we saw with the Lions, too. It's like, is there something going on there in the water in Detroit? But the Skubal thing is, that's big news. It's big news. It's one of those things that, we've all been thinking about this for such a long time, and I might go off a different tangent here with starting pitching. But when you look at, what you may have been looking for as far as a contract demands, I mean, this is probably one of the reasons why, teams like the Tigers are afraid to commit those long-term dollars to, look at it this way. Long-term pitching contracts, how many big-name pitching contracts with big numbers have really panned out?
It's true. I mean, and we're seeing that here. You got us, Evan? Are you on? I got to make sure we didn't lose you. I'm about to go on a tangent. I think we might have lost them.
I think we did.
We need the dial tone, Jeff. I don't
know where the dial tone
No,
is.
I know, but we don't have the dial tone anymore because we don't have the landline phones. But I need a dial tone because yes,
we have that.
Yes,
there you go.
Is that
gone.
Did you hit something on your board? Is that a sound?
Not.
That needs to be a sound on the board.
No, when I heard the click on his phone, and I'm like, that's not a good click.
Well, I know you get kind of sensitive to that. I mean, I've been hung up on a lot of times, Jeff. So you get sensitive to what happens there. But
I'll grab them again.
Okay, I do like the idea of on our soundboard we have the hang up noise. I think that would be funny. Like if we lost somebody in comedic fashion or they didn't like a question or something, then we can just put that dial tone noise in there. Disconnected noise, but we'll get Evan back on. He was already tired of the interview. He didn't want to talk about Scooble. I don't blame him. But it is interesting from the contract standpoint for sure, because we were talking about that a little bit in the first segment. But for the Tigers fans out there, you're looking at the contract that they gave out to McGonigal, which is a pretty steep contract currently, but it's actually pretty competitive for a guy that is ascending to where hopefully he is. And it's very close to what they gave Cabrera, which was kind of a rough contract at the time, but he was also doing it in his 30s. And so it's a good contract for somebody that's on the ascent and in their 20s and 21 years old, and you're getting all the prime years. With Skubal, you're more in the latter category. You're in the category that you had with Cabrera, and you're having to work out injury issues, decline in your play potentially, and a lot of different things. They're more likely to happen. Skubal's got a bit of an injury history, but I think we got Evan back. He didn't like my first question. He didn't like that we didn't ask him about Star Wars. He didn't like that he wanted to talk about Dave Brubeck, so he was mad. But no, Evan, we did get the disconnect sound, which is my favorite. It did actually give us the dial tone sound, so that's what I like, because just comedically it's funnier. But no, you were talking about the contracts. I was kind of filling while we were getting you back on, but we were talking about how, the contract, it's interesting to look at the juxtaposition of what they may have to do with Skubal against now what's happening and then what's already happened with McGonigal and Cabrera, because you had McGonigal that has a similar contract to what Cabrera had, but that was in his 30s. That was towards the end. And you're doing this with McGonigal where it's looking like it could be a deal as long as he ends up being what everybody thinks he will be here, especially after his hot start. But Skubal's in that Cabrera territory, and it's going to be an even richer contract than that for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's scary. And now I have to go back 2 minutes and figure out where I lost you guys, because I think I kept talking for a while. The Skubal thing, it's, you can kind of see that it's scary for teams to invest long term, and especially when you're going for Skubal coming off 2 Cy Youngs, he's going to go for probably one of the largest pitching contracts that's ever been doled out. And for a guy who's now entering his third, arm injury, it's kind of scary to invest something in like that. You think back to guys like Jordan Zimmerman that the Tigers invested in, and that was just over $100 million. And look how that panned out. Those are the kind of deals that if they don't pan out, that can really cripple your team. And that's why I think I don't even know where I got cut off at though. But I looking at this team, I'm wondering if they're building more for the future and building around guys like McConaughey, Colt Key. You have these other younger kids coming up, and the Ricciano guy from the catcher. I just think that it's such a risk. And another thing that I'll bring into this too is that I worry about with pitching is, we all love this pitch clock, as fans, and how it speeds up the game. But I really have to wonder at some point, like, what kind of impact does that pitching clock have on these arm injuries? The arm muscles don't get to reset like they usually would have, when there was more time in between pitches. So these guys I feel like they're putting more and more strain on the muscles in their arm. Listen, the human arm is not meant to throw a baseball at 100 miles per hour. It just isn't. And you see these pitching injuries go down more and more each and every year. And you got to wonder, if you're a team like the Detroit Tigers, who's at best a mid-market team, investing $400, $500 million in this guy he's already had 3 arm surgeries. Like, I don't know if that's the smartest move for this team. And
no, go ahead, Evan.
No, it's one of those things that, it can hinder you. I mean, again, I don't know where I got cut off at, but like, how many long-term, like, you go back to like even like the Mike Hampton days, or even Jacob deGrom in recent years, like these guys getting these huge money deals, and their arms they're going to give out at some point. They just are. And I think that might be something what the Tigers were thinking even before this latest arm injury, because he has had 2 arm injuries, surgeries before this latest one that we heard about today. So the Tigers are in a tough position now, because now, his value has definitely gone down. When they go into the trade deadline, you don't know how soon he's going to come back. There's not a definitive timetable for when he'll be back, other than it'll be before the end of the season. So the Tigers are in a rough little spot here. And when you factor in all the other injuries, what looks like, was going to be one of the stronger parts of this team heading into the season is now now it's a field question mark. It's a big question mark because you got Framber Valdez. We saw Casey Mize kind of get tweaked something earlier last week. Verlander he's supposed to come back and have a rehab start soon here, but I don't know. The Tigers are in a weird position. The only good thing for your Tigers you can say right now is that the division is not very good. So even at 500, they're competing right now. But it's kind of they're on a slippery slope right now with this, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with Skubal here towards the end of the season, or even come August at the trade deadline.
And I've always been in the category for a little while now where I don't see him being able to deliver the value that he would agree to in a contract with these years. Mm-hmm. That's Jeff's shaking his head too. I think he's in agreement here. It's just, and it's a numbers game. I like Skubal. It's not anything against him. He's a very tenacious pitcher, but he pitches obviously once every 5 days, whatever, and he's going to be going for one of the richest pitching contracts in the history of the major leagues, and I don't think that's going to change based on what's happened here. And so I even healthy, I didn't think the math worked out because I thought that was kind of what the Valdez signing was for to a degree too, where you got a guy that can kind of sit atop do something similar, and then you hit on the trade value, Evan, that'll go down if you could have traded him for kind of a younger starter that's on the upswing, and then a couple other value kind of minor leaguers or young major leaguers. I feel like you're resetting and you're not having to worry about paying him as you're having to pay a lot more guys. So, yeah, it does change the math on that now with him getting hurt, though.
Yeah, and it's tough, man. I mean, look at all these other. You got Jackson Jobe, who's still off injured. You had Reese Olson coming off him missing the whole season. Like, it's just a frustrating time, and I just have this feeling with these pitchers' arms. Like, I feel like moving forward, you're going to see more deals like Framber Valdez that are shorter term and higher average, just because it's hard to invest long term in these arms because, man, they go down. And again, just as you said, this is for someone who impacts a game every 5 days. Now, are those people more than important ever when you get to the postseason? Yes, of course. But again, we're seeing these arm injuries across the board. It's not just Skubal. It's these guys that throw like that. They're going to have elbow problems. They're going to have arm problems eventually. It happens to all of them. We've seen it time and time again. So when you want to invest that kind of money, $600 million, that could buy you a couple. That could buy you some franchises, some professional sports franchises. And if you put that much money into someone and it just doesn't happen, like that's a huge hindrance, especially for like a mid-market team, as I said, like with Detroit.
Can it buy you the Savannah Bananas? Then you could just put all those guys in there. Yeah. That's a lot more guys.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I still don't get the Savannah Bananas.
I don't really either. Actually, that's just what came to mind. I felt like you could definitely buy them for maybe 600,000. I don't know, but they're flipping around and all that stuff. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. It's one of the things that I like to see when injuries happen, because it's hard to take a positive out when an injury happens. Skubal, that's very tough for him. It's tough for the team. It's tough for the position that it puts everybody in. But I usually like to see, okay, well, let's see the next man up. Let's see what this looks like. But now they're thin at starting pitcher, all the guys that you mentioned, and so now I don't really even know who the next man up is at this point, because the next man up when Mize went down was pitching chaos for that moment. So we'll have to see, because they're not, they got a lot deeper with their starting rotation, but then basically right off the bat they lost, probably their sixth guy in Melton right off the bat. Then they lost Verlander, then Mize, now Skubal. Olson was already out of the mix. So you're thinning yourself out with what was a strength. So hopefully they can, at least you're getting this information early. That's the good news, is now you can know for the trade deadline and for potential moves that you're making as the season goes on. Okay, we may need some reinforcements in addition to hopefully Skubal being back for the stretch run if you can keep yourself in it.
Yeah, it's a long season. It's a long haul, and you hope he can come back and be as effective as he was. But that is a big question mark heading in. And the pitching injuries, they've devastated the team. I mean, you win with pitching, and right now when you can't keep your starters healthy, it's not a good thing.
Exactly. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll probably talk a little bit more baseball, but I also want to talk some football, maybe a little hockey, but we'll bounce around with Evan after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. About the Tigers a little bit and what they're going to do. I'm also curious. I know you've worked in the football world, football production world here, and I'm curious what you make of how big the draft has become, because it's amazing. I was watching NFL Network's coverage, and I bounced in between that and ESPN's coverage because I had to watch them eat the pumpkin pie with Mel Kiper and talk about mashed potatoes on pizza and stuff, because that's up my alley. But it's amazing how much of a spectacle this has become in the football world. I had one of my friends tell me after the season ended, the Super Bowl had just ended. He said, "Great, now the season's over. Now we can look forward to the draft." There's some people that this is like their premier thing, and just because you've done a lot of football production and show production, I'm curious to get your take on the growth of that over the last few years and the decades that Mel Kiper's been doing this for 40 years or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's safe to say, well, we've seen the NFL over the years is basically they've made the NFL a year-round sport. Like there's no stopping after the season ends, because you have the combine then, so you ramp up all the draft talk. You have the owners' meetings to talk about who's signing who, free agency. Then leading up to the draft, we were going through rookie mini camps now, getting a lot of sound bites, seeing how these first rounders are preparing in their first mini camps. And yeah, I mean, it's the NFL, and I think I never saw this movie. I believe the movie was called it was the Will Smith concussion movie, where he was talking, I believe it was to Albert Brooks, and he says, the NFL owns the day of the week, and football is king. Let's not beat around the bush. Out of all the four major power sports, it produces and brings in more income than any of the other ones. And they like to keep this, it's a year-round news cycle. It's football all the time. And we do a daily football show. I do a daily football show out here, and we're even at the point now, though, it's slowing down a little bit finally now that the draft's over. But it's something they're always going to keep out there, whether it's promoting or, watch this Netflix special with these QBs, or NFL's always going to be creating more content, it feels like, because people love the NFL. Let's face it. You factor in fantasy, you factor in, movies, TV shows, whatever. It's the sporting world in the United States, in my opinion, revolves around the NFL. And I feel like even in Detroit, the Lions are still king in the city of Detroit, even when they're bad, because people love football. That's just what it is. And yeah, the draft production, like every year, like I remember back in the day when it was just like a phone call and it wasn't even televised. And now it's just this show and theater and, you're bringing now that they're going to every city. I mean, you see the crowds there. We were in the draft. We were at the draft in Detroit, and it's amazing just to see the impact, because this is, when you draft a player, it's like, all right, well, this is a rookie kid. We're not going to see him for now another 5 months, but just the turnout, the show out, it's always the hope of a new season that people love. People love drafts. NFL obviously being the biggest one, but it offers a little bit of hope, maybe after a bad season or a losing season, but the production value and what they're doing with it it's just spectacular, and it's amazing. It's overwhelming, and they're continuing to find new ways to promote and innovate the game, and I love it. I love the draft. I watch it probably all 7 rounds every year. And, it's going to be Washington next year, I know, and that's probably going to end up being one of the biggest ones. The Lions did have one of the biggest as far as turnout drafts so far, so that was really good to see and cool in Detroit. We got there 3 hours early, and we couldn't even get in to buy the main stage. So, like I said, NFL is king. People love the draft, and they're it's now on 3 or 4 different channels when it goes. It's unbelievable, just the attention it gets. But again, people love football.
Well, like you said, hope springs eternal with the draft. That's what I always think, because I know they have draft winners and losers. Oh, these guys shouldn't have passed over this guy. But really, everybody wins the draft in their own markets as far as we added these guys. Well, yeah, but the guys you added along with the other free agents, are they going to be better than the other teams getting better? I know Jeff's happy that we're just done with the pre-draft predictions.
Yes.
We're at least done. Yeah, mock draft. Yeah, he was done with the mock drafts. I did a 7-round mock draft with a couple guys that do a podcast here locally at Michigan Football Network. Great podcast, but they had me manage 10 of the teams and do a mock draft of all the rounds. But we finished 5 picks short. It was very disappointing to me. So we didn't even finish. But it was 5 picks.
That work, and you guys were 5 picks short?
Yeah, it was come on, just pick these, even afterwards. Just pick them now. Will you pick them? But no, it is interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I don't think we've had you on since the hockey season ended. So, do you even want to talk about that, or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's we got a lot of depressing topics today. Scooball, the Red Wings. It's back to the Detroit versus everybody. Why can't we have nice things conversation? But yes, Red Wings season, very disappointing. Very disappointing. I think I'm still in the mourning period for that after what we saw. To be one of the top teams in the league at the end of January and to miss the playoffs by the amount that they did is pretty bad. I think Iserman probably said it best at the end of the year presser, and it's not really a secret, but this team needs more talent. And it's straight and simple, especially up in the top 6 and their forwards. In my opinion, I think they really, really need to look at not only their pro scouting, but the amateur scouting too. Iserman's been, good hitting on these first-round draft picks. And, you can say Emmett Finney in the 7th round, but it's some of those middle picks that just haven't hit. As far as the pro scouting, there's just been too many free agents who have come here and just missed. And it's just kind of disappointing when you see some of the names, and you got to wonder, what were they thinking? Signing guys like Justin Hull to a 3-year deal, guys like Travis Hamonic, and then there's the other side of the coin where you see some of these free agents who've come in and they've just kind of been disastrous. I'm thinking about Vladimir Tarasenko, who now went to Minnesota and, looks 1,000 times better than he did in Detroit. I worry about the Elmer Soderblom trade because he's looked fantastic in Pittsburgh since he was traded. So I really think, in my honest opinion, the biggest issue is in the scouting department, and I think there's too many buddies in the Red Wings organization, and I think they need to get a little more serious about how they approach free agency. Obviously, we're never going to know the stories about what goes on behind the curtains, but there's just been too many guys that they brought in that have just flat out failed. The drafting has been good, but free agency, it hasn't really worked out for Steve Yzerman, and that's something I think people are going to hold against him. He's not going anywhere. I know our Red Wings fans like to, blast or fire Yzerman. The Yzer plan stinks. Maybe we'll be good in 10 years. You do have to say he wasn't left with much when he did take over. Having said that, it's been a long 10 years, and this is a city that loves their hockey, and to realize that there hasn't been a playoff game yet at LCA is kind of disturbing. I don't know. I honestly thought this year was going to be a tough year. I said that at the beginning of the year because they were introducing so many new young players, with Axel Fanning Pellica. You brought up Emmett Finney. Michael Brenzig-Nygaard started off with the team. I thought it was going to be a struggle year, and they really, I think, turned it into a smoke and mirrors kind of year where they came out really hot and played well and got us all excited. And then just the collapse at the end, there's something. And if you're watching these playoff games and, for example, watch that Colorado-Minnesota game last night, the Red Wings just, I don't know if it would have been good if they made the playoffs this season because I think they would have got smoked. I just don't think this team needs an extreme makeover. And I just don't know how they go about doing that without trading considerable assets that they plan on using for the future. So everybody wants Yzerman, to say take a big swing this offseason and, bring in a big name. But what's really available, and what are these teams going to ask for? They're going to want some of the building blocks, the foundational pieces that this team has identified. And I'm not sure how that's going to work out or what's even available. So they're not in the best position right now. I think a lot of us expected a lot more this season, but now I'm kind of worried, maybe next season's not the playoffs, I feel like every year we're saying, all right, this is the make or break year. This is the year that they get over the hump and make the playoffs. But it's been 3 seasons in a row where we've seen these collapses, and they're just painful to watch. I don't know where they go from here, but I definitely think there's going to be some big time roster turnover this offseason. The draft pick too. I'm kind of bummed about that draft pick. The Red Wings not having a first round draft pick this season. I didn't like that a first round pick and Justin Falk. First round pick and prospect Buchelnikov was given for Justin Falk. 7 years ago when Justin Falk was 27, he went for way less. So I'm trying to figure out why at the age of 34 he commanded a top prospect and a first round pick. Wasn't a fan of that. I mean, Yzerman's had some moves that I would willing to bet a lot of money on that he wished he could go back and change. So there has been problems that, he's not perfect. But the thing is that people understand in the city of Detroit is that, growing up, Yzerman and his relationship to the Ilitch family was, something like Chris Ilitch grew up with Steve Yzerman as probably his biggest idol and probably felt like part of his family. He also, when the way Yzerman conducts himself as far as winning on and off the ice, yeah, he's a quiet leader, but this is eating him up. He's not going to just let go. He's going to fight. He's going to fight this until the end. So for those of the people that think that Yzerman's going anywhere, he's not. But the Red Wings sure could use some luck because they've got to find something in the top 6. They've got to find that a top playmaker or scorer, and I'm not sure that that's going to come without a big price.
Well, that's the problem with trying to answer those questions in free agency. I think that's why he's hesitated to spend big because, yeah, you usually do have to spend big and take that big swing, but it's going to be time at some point. But you hit the nail on the head with the fact that, yeah, people always call for these guys to get removed before they should. I'm not saying it's the case with Yzerman. They've been calling for it for a while, but yeah, it's with his connection with the organization, that's going to be a tough removal. Everybody's trying to remove Holmes already, except after this draft, maybe he's good. I don't know, but we're always a quick trigger on that. But appreciate you coming on and catching us up on all this stuff here. Great stuff. Make sure to tell the people where they can follow you here for more of these thoughts.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sabourin91, and then you can follow the Flying Octopus podcast at Flying Octopod on Twitter, and then at The Flying Octopod on our YouTube channel. It's me, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, just a lot of Red Wings content, man. We love talking Red Wings. We'll be starting our 3rd year this fall. Devin and Tony are great. I know they've been on this show before. Tony actually had a great article today. Came out for the Hockey Writers. If you check our webpage, it's on that. Yeah, we're around, man. We're going to be around talking hockey for a while here. So, yeah, hit us up.
And it'll get more positive. They'll get more positive, but you can't blame them for being a little down after that season. But if you're down, watch the Pistons, and then we'll have you on for the Pistons coverage to complete all 4 here at some point too. But
yeah, at least that wasn't complete misery yesterday. At least something good happened.
Exactly. So we got one nice thing out of all that. But no, we appreciate you coming on, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Evan. Thanks to Evan Sabourin. Appreciate him coming on and covering a myriad of subjects. I'm going to come back here with Jeff in studio, and then we'll get ready for the interview with Mickey Jacobs of the Order of the Blazing Horse. That would be my nominee for favorite Pistons podcast name. I have a lot of them on the show. I don't want to offend anybody. I like all the podcasts on the of the people that come on the show, but Order of the Blazing Horse is pretty good. So we'll have him on in a bit, but I'll talk to Jeff first. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. I got to give a shout out here, Jeff, because we just had an ad for Dr. Hall in this last ad break, and I got to give him a shout out because if I sound remotely normal, it is only because of him, because he did a lot of emergency work putting a crown back in for me today.
Really?
And
Okay.
my face was numb up until about a couple hours ago, so they were a little worried. Made me think of one of the Seinfeld, we're both Seinfeld fans, made me think of when Kramer had some dental work.
Yes.
Made me think of that episode. But so shout out to Dr. Hall. He did tell me, for all the fans, the Dr. Hall fans and Tate Hall fans out there, he did tell me that we can expect him to be on the show. You haven't produced a show with them on, but because they haven't been on in a while. But Tate, he's got to be 9 now, but he was 8 when he started coming on the show, and he's very knowledgeable about the Vikings, and he comes prepared.
Ooh.
He's got all these notes. He's got more notes than I do. He's better dressed than I am. He really shows me up. If we had video in studio,
Okay.
he's really showing me up when he comes in. But it's fun to have him in because I think we're going to do some coverage of the teams at large too in the NFL, do some counter intel a little bit about some of the drafts, and at least with the NFC North, because we got to figure out what's going on there. The early results were they were not happy with their draft, though. I haven't gotten Tate's opinion yet, though.
Yeah. Well, Tate's is the one that counts,
Yeah,
right?
that's the big one. That's the big one. If he hasn't been picked up by Barstool or somebody else, that's what I always worry about. But yeah, they drafted Caleb Banks in the first round.
Yeah,
and
that was
a bit of a reach by most people's estimation with the injury history and some other needs out there. So they're going to be kind of the wild card, I feel like, in the NFC North this year. How did they go from having J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold, and Daniel Jones to now a lesser J.J. McCarthy and Kyler Murray as their quarterbacks? That quarterback transition just I have no idea how that happened. So they're probably not going to be happy. But they wanted to talk about Will Reichard, who's their kicker. So I thought, well, that's perfect. Yeah, they can talk about him with Shane. Shane probably knows him. Shane probably trained him.
Yeah,
there's that. I do want to talk the Lions draft with you because we'll probably have to do that in the segments after Mickey. But I'm excited to get your thoughts on the draft now that it's over. You're just happy that it's over and that we don't have to predict. Would you like to make any predictions? We could make some predictions. They'd probably be pretty good now. If you'd like to make some draft predictions.
Draft predictions?
Yeah. Well, you didn't like the predictions, but now you can do some predictions, and I bet they'd be pretty accurate.
I think we get 4 starters out of this draft.
Oh, I like that prediction.
How about that?
I was giving you an opportunity to predict Blake Miller to the Lions in the first round, and then Jimmy Rolder in the fourth round.
You were on Blake Miller from the get-go. I got on Blake Miller, but you, my friend, were before anything I ever heard nationally or regionally about Blake Miller.
I appreciate that. I think it was me and Eric Schlitt that were kind of like the two in that camp. Those were the only two I heard really talking about him. And I don't know if have you ever paid attention to the grit index that
Yes.
Eric and Anthony do?
Yes.
I think that's really interesting. I know it could seem a little gimmicky, but it's also pretty interesting because it factors in something that I always think is underrated, which is the character fit and the player fit from a toughness and character standpoint. That's something you especially have to consider with the Lions, but it's true with all these teams. They may be looking for something different, but you got to take that factor. You got to take, okay, well, the Eagles are going to look for guys that look like this, and the Lions are going to look for guys that look like that. And I think the grit index is a great indicator, because although we may never know what Holmes has planned, we also do kind of know what he looks for to a degree.
We know
too.
what he likes.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I want to talk more about that as we go on. Also, what happened, Jeff? I pulled up the Tigers, and now they're already losing.
Are they?
Yeah, they flipped from 2-0 to 3-2. So they were apparently mad that we didn't talk about them.
Duran homer, 3-run homer
here. So good thing Evan's not on the line still. He'd be mad about that too. But we're going to turn our attention to the big story in the Detroit market here. Jeff and I were both of the mind that the Pistons would be back, and they are. They are into the second round. I think what was the overwhelming favorite coming into this playoff run as far as the Eastern Conference goes is out. Boston's out.
Which makes me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that for you and Mickey when we get into the segment too, because they did a preview of the semifinals in the Eastern Conference without mentioning the Pistons.
Of
I
course.
thought that was kind of interesting. But we'll talk about that with Mickey Jacobs of Order of the Blazing Horse after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
From the GarbarinoRoofs.com studios in Granville.
Country with a Twist. Jethro FM. 1530 AM. WYGR Wyoming Grand Rapids. 94.9 FM Grand Rapids. 99.5 FM Lowell. And Jethro South. 980 AM WAKV Otsego Plainwell. 98.9 FM Otsego. And 105.1 FM Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
Now we get to move on to the team.
Happy times.
Yeah, exactly. We got bright times ahead with Mickey Jacobs. We're excited about that. And Mickey, as you know, we celebrate the thing of the day, but we're a little bit non-traditional here, as you may or may not know. So you might think we're going to go with Star Wars, but we're going to go with Mickey Jacobs' favorite juice because it's National Orange Juice Day.
This is a good one. I'm gonna not overthink it. I'm gonna say apple juice.
We got two apples here, Jeff. Yeah, that's a solid choice. We were more in the tropical category, Mickey. We both went with like the mango or mango pineapple. The two of us in studio.
Amazing choices. You can't go wrong. I went first thought, best thought.
I kind of wanted to do the Star Wars one because I'm not really a big Star Wars guy. So I think that would have been funny when people would have named a character and I would have been like, was that John Candy's character in Spaceballs? And they'd be like, no. And so no, we stuck with Juice. Jeff, that was the right call on that one. But no, I'm excited about this. I was in the preview of this segment. At the end of the last segment, I was telling Jeff that it was funny to me. I don't know if you were still watching the game at this point, but they were doing a preview of the Eastern Conference semifinals here, and the fact that they've got 4 teams left, and they said, "Oh, it's wide open. Any of these teams can win it." And then they proceeded to talk about the 3 other teams that are left, and not mention that Detroit was even left in the playoffs. And I had to literally laugh out loud because that's a great summary of how the Pistons have been treated the whole time. Boston's out of it now, and now they have a pretty good shot. Cleveland's going to be tough, but their chances went up when Boston went out, when obviously they made it past Orlando, which was a tough opening series. But it was just funny to me that it was like, you're literally covering this game. You're doing the game, and you're leaving off one of the team that actually won the game.
Yeah, and it's not like anybody called the Boston Celtics frauds after they blew a 3-1 lead and then got knocked out. For them, it became a gap year, because they didn't have Tatum in that game. And yeah, I feel like the Pistons always get the toughest narrative and the harshest the short end of the stick from national media, but that's okay. That's okay. We don't need their support.
Oh, I like it. I frankly like it. It's not even a complaint at this point. It's like, hey, let's get more of this. Let's pile more on and give them more fuel to the fire, because there is a legitimate chance to have some belief in this team. I know it was a tough series. I also think, I'm curious about your opinion on this, but I mean, Orlando, if we rewind to the beginning of the season, they were one of the favorites in the East. They were one of the teams that people were pretty high on. Then they had all those injury issues, and then they had a fairly complete lineup once they got to the playoffs, and you kind of went, okay, I can see why this team was predicted to do a little bit better than they did. Then they had some bench players that had grown into larger roles and played pretty well in the playoffs, and so they gave a good shot at it. And in their defense, because I always highlight the injuries to the Detroit teams, they lost Wagner, which was a huge injury. So it would have been interesting to see how that would have played out. But that kind of goes to one of my points with the playoffs, is this is a war of attrition at this point, and the Pistons are one of the deeper teams. They may not be top heavy, but they're deep.
Absolutely. And to your point, I have a ton of respect for the Orlando Magic. They, for the past couple of seasons, I feel like all of their matchups have been wars, because they play a similar style that we do. They play hard defense. They don't shoot the ball all that great. And they're big, and they pack the paint, and that clearly gave Detroit problems. And it is unfortunate that Franz went out, but I feel good. I feel like the Pistons, after getting out of this series, there's momentum, and there's sort of this feeling that they can take those lessons into Cleveland, who also has a big, not as strong, but tall front court. And I feel like they can kind of do anything.
That's the interesting part about this matchup to me, because it kind of played out in the first round. One of the things that I had been saying headed into the playoffs for the Pistons in general was I'd like to see how a 7-game series goes if the Pistons are in it. And you highlighted it, Mickey, that these were two of the toughest teams to play against, and so I think they both wore each other down to a degree, but the Pistons still came out on top. If they're doing this with Cleveland, if they're dragging the series on, I've got to put a heavier bet on the Pistons because of their depth, their strength, especially in their front line. And, I like the idea of taking, James Harden and some other guys deeper into the series and see how their conditioning is.
Yeah, not only that, Toronto played very physical series with them, and they made it really interesting, more interesting than anyone thought that they could. So I think there's a lot to look forward to in terms of the Pistons just sticking to their game plan and doing what they do well. Because I think, and this is no knock on the Orlando Magic, I think a lot of the reason the Pistons dug themselves such a deep hole is because they weren't playing their brand of basketball. They had to turn it on in that second half of Game 6, which was just unbelievable. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. But it really felt like, and I think Jalen Duren said this, that they hadn't put together a complete game. And I don't know if that was just adjustment to the postseason or the bright lights or the pressure, but they did stick it out, and I really hope they can carry this against the Cavs.
Hopefully they have some momentum now. Yeah, that to your point, I feel like they've kind of turned it on, hopefully at the right time. And they did get. I was very happy with the performance they got from Danis Jenkins, especially in that last game, because he had been struggling a little bit. I thought Jeff made a great point when we were talking about the Pistons a little earlier in the season, that it seemed like his arc, it was, he was on the upswing, great story, two-way guy, getting signed, and then it was like once he was signed, then it was too real for him to a degree. He started gripping a little bit, and Jeff had pointed that out to me, and I hadn't really thought about it before then. Then it seemed like he settled back in, but now I'm curious, Jeff, on your thoughts on this, because you're the one that noticed it in the first place. It seemed like once they hit the playoffs, he then tightened up again, and then now hopefully that Game 7 made him a little looser.
I think so. I think he was trying to do too much. And he let the game come to him in Game 7. And you notice they were looking for him for the 3.
Exactly.
And when you knock down a couple and the confidence comes, you're going to see the ball more.
And I mean, he can pretty much do whatever he wants out there. I mean, he finds
Except
a lot
go
of
in the lane
space
and try and do a layup.
Well,
Seriously, Jenkins. It's like I've never seen a ball get swatted so hard twice in my life in a game.
That's not really the place you want to go against Orlando. But he finds so much room otherwise, and that's interesting to me how he is able to find that space. He's a good passer. He's got a pretty decent jumper from the outside, but I know you guys have been following Danis all season on the podcast, and it had to be nice to see that at the end here, because hopefully he's going to be a pretty important piece. There's not a lot of dependable ball handlers beyond Cade, especially the way they've shortened the rotation. We're not seeing as much Karis LeVert. Thompson's handling the ball a little bit more, but Jenkins is going to be important if they're going to make a deep run.
I think you both make great points, and especially when you consider the fact that this is essentially Danis's rookie season. So he's had to go through several arcs of growth super fast, and I agree with you, Jeff. I thought in the first few games he was looking sped up. I don't know if it was jitters, but he was forcing a lot of shots, and his catch and shoot 3-point percentage is great. His off the dribble 3-point shooting percentage is not the best, and as you guys said, in Game 7, he really let it come to him. He didn't force. And also, I will say, I think Orlando was an especially tough matchup for him just because he is on the smaller side. And even if he's not playing his best, he, like you said, is one of our only actual ball handlers. And JB didn't really have a choice. He kind of had to play in minutes, whether he's looking great or whether the shot's falling, and it wasn't or not. So, yeah, hopefully this carries over, and hopefully Cleveland's a little bit of an easier team for him to play against. Donovan Mitchell's not huge. Harden's pretty big. And then, I was talking to my partner Harry about this, and it's going to be the Danis versus Dennis matchup. I mean, there's a lot of fun things about the Detroit-Cleveland matchup storyline-wise, but I think that's going to be really interesting. The Pistons' former backup point guard versus the new one that they made a pretty big bet on at the trade deadline, as we sort of talked about the last time I was on the show.
I do like that matchup as a feature matchup. I felt like I made a comment when it was a possibility that they play the Hornets, that you need all the ambulances in the Detroit metro area, and then Orlando, you kind of still needed them. Now you might need it for that matchup alone. That there's a couple matchups in that series, but that'll be an interesting one because those guys are both very feisty. They clearly have a type with their backup point guards here.
Absolutely, yeah, they can both get into it with the best of them for sure.
But I like that, and Dennis struggled a little bit in that series. He had some good moments and some moments that he probably would want back, but they do have some interesting depth on that team. We're going to take a quick break, but I want to preview the matchup with the Cavs here with Mickey Jacobs of the Order of the Blazing Horse. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Wanted to talk more about the Cavs here. This is an interesting storyline. There's a lot in the game, as you kind of already highlighted, but one of the things that I said at the beginning of the year that was, I guess, kind of classified as a hot take at the time, I really didn't think it was, but when the Kevin Durant trade happened, I was saying I'm very happy that the Pistons didn't do anything like this. I'm happy that they stuck with their young core. I'm happy that they didn't get Durant for a similar package. And everybody's like, well, wouldn't you want Durant? Obviously, Houston's already out of it. I'm not taking a victory lap on that. But I look at Cleveland as kind of a similar version in the Eastern Conference here because they obviously made the big play for Harden. He's an MVP. He's a former MVP. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's a great player, but there's kind of a purgatory that happens where if you ascend and then take your swing and miss, it's like you get sent back a level and you kind of get caught in the middle to now where you've got aging stars that don't quite have their value. And I'm not saying the Cavs are there yet. They've got, according to the NBC broadcast, they've got a very good chance at making the finals, a better chance than the Pistons. And they were one of the favorites going in. to the playoffs here because they've got a lot of talent, they've got depth, they've got stars, they've got shooters, they've got that big man combo. But I'm curious kind of how you take this team in with the matchup with the Pistons, because it is a very intriguing matchup and it's a very different build and construction from the Pistons.
Definitely, and you make a great hindsight. Really was 2020 with that KD trade. You couldn't have been more right. But I definitely think the Pistons are in a good position just compared to some of these teams, even the Magic, just because they haven't spent their money yet. You know, they still have their picks. They haven't gone out and made a big swing. So to be doing what they're doing and still be so flexible is something that fans should be excited about. They didn't make a big chip shove for a Desmond Bain or a James Harden or something like that. But this is going to be a different matchup for sure. Cleveland is not as good defensively, even though that was, sort of the identity that they established when Bickerstaff was there. But I think one of the big differences is they can score. And they can score from deep. They can score around the rim. So it's going to be different. And I don't think you're going to have a 19-point half from Cleveland like Orlando did. I think they have a way more potent offense, and I think our rotations are going to be so much more important. You can't bank on them bricking a bunch of threes or settling because they can do it at three different levels, and they have a lot of scores.
That's a great point, because one of the reasons we were both pretty steadfast, Jeff and I, about the result of the Pistons series, because to me, I tend to look at things somewhat objectively. And at that point in the series, when they were down 3-1, then obviously that the fifth game then became quite tough. But when they were down 3-1, it was like, okay, I think, or the sixth game rather, I think I think everything will return to the mean to a degree, because the Magic their shooting splits were crazy. You got Banchero, who's one of the lower percentage pull-up shooters in the NBA, hitting all these pull-up threes. There were just a lot of anomalous things that you thought would kind of return to the mean. Whereas with Cleveland, they have a lot of things going for them. They if they do play slightly above average, that's going to look a lot different than when Orlando was playing above average, and they do have some things to kind of return to, because as much as I didn't necessarily like it from a Pistons perspective, because I thought the Raptors matchup would be better for them, this is a more exciting matchup in a lot of ways, but the Raptors were probably the easier team, even though they were scrappy. But that Jared Allen game in Game 7 was incredible, because I've always been a Jared Allen fan, and it shows that there's upside with these other guys. If Harden or Mitchell isn't working out to their regular average, then you've got those two big guys that are pretty multi-dimensional and good at a lot of different things. Then you've got all those shooters that you're talking about. You've got a lot of different angles with this Cavs team. So it is a tougher matchup, but it is fun, because obviously, you talked about the Dennis Danis matchup, but the premier matchup is being able to see JB against his former team, even though maybe some of the guys aren't the same. That's quite the angle here. I don't think the NBA could script it any better.
No, it's really exciting, and so interesting too that the Cavs fired JB because of his lack of X's and O's and playoff acumen. And it seems like the Cavs got stretched to 7 games just like the Pistons did. So, and they got knocked out in the second round last season. So I don't know how well that's aging, but I think we're reaping the benefits of it. I'm glad you brought up Jared Allen. I was talking to Harry about this. It's interesting that he struggled for a lot of the series and then had a big Game 7 just like JD. And that'll be really interesting. And clearly the Magic strategy was to shut down Jalen Duren and just sort of make Cade and the rest of the guys do it themselves, which, for the first 6 games or so, that's what happened. And Cade was great. Tobias was amazing. Asar was transcendent. And then slowly but surely you saw Jalen Duren get more confident. And I'm curious to see if the Cavaliers try to do something similar. I don't think it's going to operate the same way, just because Jalen's a lot stronger than Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And I want to see him sort of forcing his will and just muscling his way to the basket, getting to the line. That alone will open things up for us in a way that the Magic series was just way more of a war.
I totally agree, and people are going to probably not understand this or make fun of me for this, but I think you'll understand this, Mickey. I like the matchup a lot better with Duran against Cleveland than I did against Toronto, because he struggled against Portal at times, and he's a little tougher, a little bit more robust. And nothing against Allen and Mobley. They are great defenders, but I like the matchup better with Duran, like you said, mainly because of the size and the strength, and he's usually fared pretty well. I think he'll be able to wear them down in a way that he was having a hard time doing against Carter, and then not that he was always matched up with him, but Batazzi as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about Pirtle, too. I've heard a lot of people writing him off, and I'm just remembering anecdotally, I feel like Duran struggled against him. I feel like some of those bigger rim-protecting 7-footers, not saying Pirtle's the greatest center in the world, but guys like him, guys like Zubac, it's not as easy for JD to just sort of muscle his way through. But I think this is going to be different. I also think some of those butterflies hopefully are gone. I think there's a little bit of confidence that comes from just making it out of the first round alone and just sort of saying, you know what, I'm going to change the narrative. I mean, at least I hope that's what he does, because there's a lot of money riding on it for him. I was talking to Harry, too. He made a great point that one of the great things about getting out of the first round, just besides the fact that we're getting into the second round, is that we get another 4 to 7 games of data on Jalen Duran in the postseason. Was this his struggles a matchup thing with the Magic, or is this really a concern moving forward that would affect his contract? So either way, I feel like it's going to be great information and an exciting matchup.
Where did you guys lie on that? Because I was getting, you probably have this too. I've seen all the games this season. I watch every game in the Detroit market of the big 4 teams to cover them for the show. But I've got a lot of friends that are now watching the Pistons because they're in the playoffs, and they're texting me, Duran's not worth the money. Let's get out on this guy. And I understand that it's information. I agree with you on that. It's definitely information, but it's also this was kind of a recency bias that they were doing because they hadn't really seen him play other than the first 2 games or whatever at that point against the Magic. But I am curious because I feel like even if he struggles in this next series, I don't know that that's going to affect the trajectory for him, but it'll be interesting to see. I also don't think he's going to struggle, so there's that too.
I think he's going to. This may sound crazy, but the way Orlando packed that lane, their guys were a lot bigger than Cleveland's front court. They're tall, but they don't. I think Duran will be able to push and have his way, and that's the same with Beef Stew. I think they're both gonna be way more physical. They're skin and bones in Cleveland.
It's true. And even the other positions, because that's why the Franz Wagner, arguably that was a bigger loss on the defensive side of things, because he was able to put some size against Cade. So you're not having the size in the front court, and then in the back court, you're not able to put that size on Cade. You've got 2 smaller guards. You've got Thompson in the mix that is going to be running around and also wreaking havoc. Yes, not a thick guy in his own right, but a very athletic and strong offensive rebounder. So what do you think, Mickey? I feel like this is prime for Duran, but say he does have a subpar series again. Do you think that affects the offseason plan?
I think a little bit, and I'm of a couple different minds about this because, to your original question, I think that was Orlando's like a big part of their strategy, and I think that that's something that they were uniquely able to accomplish, at least for several games, in a way that Cleveland can't just do. But I mean, the so much of this for me is just a lesson in the difference from the regular season to the playoffs. And, we know Jalen Duran wants big money, like $40 million, that neighborhood of money. And he's 22 years old. He averaged 20 and 10. He's a first-time All-Star. I think the future is super bright. He has unbelievable chemistry with Cade. But this stuff does matter, especially when you're asking for that kind of money. And I think the Pistons are going to want to get better in the offseason. And paying another guy a near max contract affects your ability to go in and bring in outside talent. So I think he's going to thrive. I'm not terribly worried, but this is sort of the difference between, are you a second option? Are you a third option? are you, the long-term sort of archetype that we can rely on at this role? Because I don't think, first of all, I think he's a unique and special player and special talent, but you can't really point to a lot of centers like him in the league that are making that kind of money. So I think the burden is on him a little bit. If he's asking for that kind of money and he bet on himself, show us why you're that guy in the postseason. And, I'm glad he found it in games. I think game 6 was better and game 7 was great. But yeah, no, I don't think no one should be giving up on Jalen Duren, even if he struggles in this series, but I do think it changes the contract conversations for sure. But I mean, say it again, he's 22 years old and he's already doing really exciting stuff.
And we forget that he's only 22 years old.
Because he does not look 22 years old. That I've been saying that ever since he couldn't drink when he was first in the NBA. Because I mean he's got the shoulders. I mean, he's built like Kevin Willis was at the end of his career, and he looks about the same age as Kevin Willis was at the end of his career. No, he's a grown man and he plays the game like that, but he's still a young man, and he's got a lot of upside too. That's the thing with him. He's got a jumper that looks like could develop at least to kind of the mid range with some consistency. He's a good ball handler for a big guy, smooth passer. I don't think the passing of that front court gets enough credit, because I know I love Beef Stew. He's one of my favorite players on the team. I know he can get a reputation for having a little bit of brick hands and kind of stumbling around out there, but he's a smooth passer. So is Duren. They have some skills to develop there, but I'm excited that he's got another series. I think he's got to thank his forward buddies there, Tobias Harris and Asar Thompson, because they're a big reason why they actually advanced to that next series, of course, with Cade and others. But man, it was so great to see Harris play that well in this series.
It was unbelievable. I mean, we should all be thanking Asar and Tobias. They were just so fantastic, and for Tobias to do it at this stage in his career against one of his former teams, and a lot of the knock on him, and somewhat justifiably so, was, the 3-ball isn't falling, or he's not scoring as much as he needs to. He was so consistent in that series and just so reliable. And, you gotta want to see that guy retire here. I don't know how much longer he should start, but I just think Tobias is such a huge part of what the Pistons do. And, he's really the last remaining vet from the turnaround. So I think that's so valuable. I feel like he could be the Pistons' Udonis. And to your point about Duren, he does not look like a 22-year-old. I'm over a decade older than him, and I still see him as a father figure. So I'm very excited to see what the future holds for Duren.
The monkey's off the back for Tobias.
Oh, big time.
You could see he was celebrating, but you could see the relief, because it has been noted, the struggles in the playoffs, especially the later the series went, he struggled more. And to have a game like that in Game 7, and for Duren, I think if you asked him off record what team he wanted, it would be Cleveland, because they struggle against the pick and roll.
Yeah, that was the big thing, because I know, like I said, maybe people that don't watch a lot of basketball, thankfully we know Mickey does, and we do, the Poeltl thing, they'd say, well, you're worried about Jakob Poeltl. He's played very well against Duren, and that build, like you said, it might be something in that region, because you brought up a few, and then Vucevic is in that category for me too, with him. That he doesn't have to worry about him, but it is interesting, that matchup, because Allen and Mobley are both very talented. That's not undercutting them at all, but they're just a different matchup for somebody like Duren. We'll see how Tobias does in this series. It's all found money for him at this point, because he was really one of the ones that carried him. He's got to regress probably to some sort of mean, because this was his best set of games in a while, especially a couple of them in that series. But I'm with you. I think they need to sign him, and hopefully he can settle to something like a mid-level exception, and then that would be a pretty good value for him at this point in his career.
For sure, yeah. And I hope that he doesn't have to carry as heavy a load as he did in the first round, because Duran sort of returns to at least close to what he was doing in the regular season, because he was just carrying games, 30-point games, 20-10 games. So that would be really great. And I too just have to highlight how important Asar is, because, you're talking about people who don't know about Duran's struggles against guys like Pirtle or Vooch or, the Brook Lopez's of the world. But Asar is just so important to what the Pistons do. And I think if you don't watch a ton of games, you're like, oh, he doesn't really have an offense. He struggles to shoot the ball. He is so integral to everything the Pistons do. And his defense creates offense, and he's still so young. And the ceiling is still so high for him. And I'm not just talking about his insane vertical. He is truly a star. So even though it might not always end up on ESPN highlights or just like crazy clutch threes or dunks, he's really incredible. And just his defense is, if not for guys like Wembanyama, he would be absolutely Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
He's so fun to watch.
He
was
is.
so fun to watch in that series.
He is.
If you just watched him run around, get his hands, the way he's so uncanny how he can get his hands on that ball.
Well, Shane has, so on the football show, Shane Graham he talks about kind of hidden yardage in punts and how you can kind of flip the field, and talks about the value of a good kick and a good punt on special teams. That's how I look at Asar's value, because it's like it's a little hidden sometimes, but the fact that some of these plays that he was making where they score a basket and then he steals it at half court and then gets another basket, that turnaround, that swing, that point swing, especially if they hit a three, they were going to hit a three on that possession. That's a 5-point swing, and it's a huge momentum swing for the Pistons. Those plays saved the series for them at times, and it's fun because he's peaking at the right time too. Because you can talk about his jumper, you can talk about him on offense. He's very valuable on offense, and he's found the one. I've never really had a criticism with his jumper. I think that'll develop. They're not too worried about that clearly right now. The one thing on offense for him is he's able to get anywhere he wants on the floor. On offense, defense, transition, it doesn't matter. But on offense, sometimes he gets to that place and then he doesn't really know what to do when he gets there. He's kind of like, oh, I'm here now. How did I get here? I took 2 steps and I went from half court to the free throw line. How did I do that? Not a problem I have. I need about 20 steps to get there in about 3 minutes. But it is interesting to watch him because now he's just been a lot more decisive, and that's the only thing that I wanted to change this year. The shooting, we can work on that in the offseason with Vincent and crew, but he needed to be more decisive, and in this playoff run, he has been more decisive.
Oh, for sure. And you bring up a great point, talking about the hidden yardage. The possession game is so important for teams like the Pistons, especially in the series against the Magic, where neither team shoots the ball particularly well. It's all about getting possessions and rebounding. I think in every game, the team that won the rebounding battle won the game. And I think he averaged almost 10 rebounds a game. And to your point, just with his decisiveness and growth, you really saw it in the same way that JD grew as a leader when Cade went down. Asar growing as a leader, they were getting each other fired up. Seeing those two guys grow as leaders and just being so young, I think should inspire a lot of confidence, and just see that they're not going to let us go out like that. They're not going to let it, even with a 24-point deficit in the second half of a closeout game 6. They are just willing us to victory, and I think he deserves so much credit.
They're a tough team to count out for that very reason. So this is going to be a fun series. Hopefully we keep getting more series to talk about, but I'm glad we got a bonus one. It was looking a little dicey. We didn't give up hope, but be sure to tell people where they can follow the podcast here for the playoff coverage.
Yeah, check us out, Order of the Blazing Horse. We're on YouTube. We're on Blue Sky. We talk Pistons. We play games. We do bits. We have a lot of fun. Very lighthearted approach, pretty positive vibes overall. Not a lot of dooming, although I'll be honest, I got a little close there in this series. But yeah, we have a really good time.
It's a great podcast. Be sure to tune in. I enjoy it. Yeah, it's good. It's kind of similar to our show. It's a good combination of they like to keep things light and joke around, but very good information as well. So be sure to tune in. But hopefully we'll have more to talk about, and we'll definitely have you on soon. But we appreciate you joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon here.
Thanks so much for having me, fellas. It was a blast as always.
All right, thanks, Mickey. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks to Mickey Jacobs. Appreciate him coming on and talking about some Pistons here. Jeff and I got a couple segments in studio. I'm excited. We'll check in on the. Yeah, I know we're going to be in trouble by the end of the two segments. I think probably, but we'll see what trouble we get into after the break here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. It was becoming the Occam's razor choice for me, as far as it just. I said this a few times on the show, but if you read his history and his description, it was like you had typed in to an AI mechanism, build me a Lions draft pick at offensive tackle.
Which, absolutely, and which surprised me. That's what, no, I don't remember, I don't think I saw any national guys picking Blake Miller.
Well, this became very interesting because, as you know, we have the branding on this show, and then it's still, intel based on extra points, and we're always gathering intel. And, yes, that's off of my career and all of that, but it really is true. We do get a variety of voices, and they are high information, and they bring a lot of stuff. And then I'm kind of the aggregator to a degree of like, okay, I'm listening to this, I'm listening to that. But what was interesting when we brought in, because pre-draft, we probably talked about the draft with at least a dozen different people, many of them on the Lions beat, and then a few on the national beat. And what was fascinating to me is there was a huge dividing line. If you talk to somebody on the Lions beat, they were saying they were gravitating towards Miller at the end. It was Eric and I at the beginning, and then people were coming on. But they were more in the Blake Miller, or Monroe Freeling was kind of the wild card there. They were looking at him as a possibility. And if you talk to somebody on the national beat, it was Caden Proctor or bust. It was they're trading up for Caden Proctor. That's all you were getting. And I thought, this is a masterclass, because I even said it on the show before the draft to, I think, one of the Lions beat guys that we were talking to. I said, I think this is a well-executed swerve by Brad Holmes and company, because somebody yelled at me for saying it on the show. Like, come on, you're going behind the curtain here, and you're saying it too early. I don't have any information to that effect. I'm just seeing the trends, and I'm saying, hey, you can't. It's hard to not let information get out there nowadays. It's hard to keep information in-house, and they do keep a lot of information in-house. But a lot of times the way you create information issues is misinformation, because you can't revoke information. So you add information, make it misinformation. There was an Office episode about this where Michael Scott lied to everybody and basically executed this concept. But I thought that's what they were going for. People knew they were going after a tackle. People knew that they were in the tackle market. So rather than indicate, hey, look at this guy from Clemson, he probably looks like a Lions player, they went, no, hey, Caden Proctor, he's big, he's an athlete, he's from Alabama, we've got a bunch of guys from Alabama, we talked to him. I even think it might have been a swerve that they were talking to him in public, because I don't know if you remember early on, they talked to him at, I think, the Senior Bowl, because he was there supporting some of his Alabama brethren there. And I'm thinking back to that, thinking, okay, they were so tightly held about what they did in this process this year. And then all of a sudden they're talking to literally one of the biggest prospects, both from a potential standpoint and just a physical standpoint, in the crowd in the Senior Bowl, which is the I've been down there. It's like everything's very visible. And that, to me, I just came to this conclusion as I'm talking to you right now, Jeff. But I think that was part of the swerve. I think that was it from the beginning. Did they have interest in talking to him? Yes, I think so. But I think the fact that they did it in public was indicative of the fact that they probably weren't going to go that way.
The Detroit Lions they were the only team in the NFL that spent the most time on offensive tackle. They literally, if they didn't bring those guys in, they went and saw them. They interviewed almost all of these guys. But the only thing I could think about the national media not staying on Blake Miller is because it was too obvious, maybe.
Well,
it was
that's
too obvious.
That's what's crazy. That's why I said Occam's razor, because it's not like I was really doing anything that was that it wasn't creative at all. Like, I was taking the information and I was reading the profiles and I was going, okay, Caden Proctor. And I covered Steve's show on Saturday. We talked to Josh Helmer, who's now in charge of Lions Wire. He took over for Jeff Risdon, and he also is in charge of Hawkeyes Wire. So I brought up with him, hey, I might as well lean into this because I've been regarded as anti-Caden Proctor on this Lions beat, but it's nothing against him. It was the idea that I didn't think they were as in on him as they were indicating to other people. And he had transferred away from Iowa twice. And so I got that timeline from him. And when I heard that, this is a program that they get a lot of players from, and they're getting information from Iowa on this guy. They're talking to Ferentz and a bunch of the guys there. And so it was interesting to me, but I do think that they gave a report to the guys on the national beat. Daniel Jeremiah had it. Peter Schrager had it about, hey, we're interested in this guy. And I think they did that intentionally. I think they fed the machine. I watched the clip where Jeremiah says on one of his podcasts, oh, I'm hearing from the Lions that they're really high on this guy. I think he was being honest. I think
so.
I think he did hear from somebody. I don't know who. But that's it. It's interesting. It's fun to watch that part because we joke around about my intelligence background and refer to it sometimes, but like that, this is classic. This was misinformation at its finest. They were putting out white noise for everybody else to hear, and then they were doing other things with their operation. So it was fun to see. They executed that. What'd you think of the rest of the draft there?
I thought it was great. I thought, when I heard he can't miss. He can't miss in this draft. I'm like, he could miss. And I thought he had a really good draft. I know some of these guys are like, well, Michigan, we took 2 Michigan guys. And I'm like, I don't think Brad Holmes cares where these guys played. It's about getting them and talking to them and watching film about them, but it's talking to them and getting information about them, and that he knows his guys. And it's the same with Dan Campbell. The first thing Dan Campbell says about Miller is he was always available. And who hasn't been available for the last 2 years? We've gone through so many injuries. One mispractice for a broken wrist or broken hand, that's it.
And it was literally because of the surgery. Conflicted with the time. Nick Saban said 2 on the national broadcast. Another thing the national broadcast got wrong. I was sitting at home going, oh, Miller's ticked off about this, that Saban gave him 2 practices off instead of just that one for the hand.
And you know what else hurt Proctor is what Saban said on that.
It's true. And that was another thing.
He called him out about the way he practiced and his eating habits. He did not shy away from that, and I'm telling you right now, that hurt him.
That's another thing that the Lions just don't do well with. They want guys that are motivated, and I'm not saying that Proctor's not motivated, but that is indicative of maybe some motivation issues at times. He's a young guy. He was a very young guy when he was coached by Saban because he was a freshman, and I'm very reluctant to get on. I had a buddy one time that he was criticizing one of the Michigan quarterbacks, and we were like in our mid 30s at the time. I said, "Isn't that kid like 19?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "So we're technically old enough to be his dad, right?"
Right.
And so I'm careful on that, and I'm not saying that about Proctor. I'm only tying it to the fact that the Lions that are not going to be as interested in somebody like that when Miller is on the board. If Miller wasn't there, if it was between Proctor and Freeling or Proctor and Ian Akor or some of the other guys, I could see it. I really could. But Miller was just the sterling example of somebody that they would go after. And so him in comparison to pretty much anybody else just
they
didn't
needed
make
a starter.
sense.
They needed a starter to plug and play right now. And Miller started all 4 years at Clemson. Proctor, not many starts. And Freeling, not many starts.
Just the one season.
Those guys are going to come into camp, and they will struggle. And the guys we brought in were not strong enough. And, I heard Campbell say he's going to come in and compete. I'm telling you, he's starting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, things would have to go a little haywire.
Yes.
But this is great for Borum to be that swing tackle. I think that's perfect because one of the knocks on Miller when they were trying to kind of find one was, well, he can't play left tackle. We don't know that he can't play left tackle. He just only played right tackle in college. There's a big difference, especially when Proctor is slated to be a guard at the NFL level right now. So was Maui Noah, who was drafted pretty high. So it's all pretty interesting. But I'm glad you brought up the thing about Michigan because I do think that made some of the local fans happier than they would be against with other picks. They're like, oh, we got two pretty good guys. Rolder was a bit of a reach for that time frame for that, but I'm still comfortable with him getting his guy, and he had only started basically the 1 year, so there's some upside there. And like you said, it's not because he went to Michigan. They're scouting these guys. The other linebacker that they got, for anybody that's interested, was in the UDFA, and he was from Morgan State in the HBCU. So they're not just scouting
There's
Michigan.
A little buzz around him too.
There's a lot of buzz, and we're going to be covering these guys, especially on Extra Points, and going in depth on a lot of these guys. But Eric Hunter is a name to remember that's at a position that they're a little thin at as far as they do need a couple depth linebackers. Rolder's going to be one of them, but I think Hunter's going to be one as well. So he's a guy to keep your eye on because he's kind of like James Houston, but with more coverage ability, and that's what they always wanted from Houston. So that'll be an interesting name to watch. But we'll take a quick break and come back and finish up the show. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. When we went to a full football show, I thought, what are we going to cover in the offseason? I'm not thinking that so much anymore. We got a lot of good stuff coming. We'll be talking with Shane here on Thursday, but we'll preview the lineup in a second. But want to thank our sponsors as well here, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry. Another shout out to him for getting me on the mend here. Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, iCore, and the West Michigan Sports Commission. Want to thank our guests, Evan Sabourin and Mickey Jacobs. Appreciate them keeping us on track. Always thanks to Jeff here because it's fun to talk with him in studio. He always adds a lot of stuff. And I'm reading my sponsors here, Jeff, and I think it's just going to become all the people that try to keep me in one piece for the show. I got my dentist on here.
I like that strategy. I might have to use that myself.
I mean, the prerequisite for that is you got to be in as rough a shape as I am. So that's the concussion history, bad arm, all of this kind of stuff. So but there's those are good guys to go to. Williams Chiropractic, he's helped me a ton. And yeah, that is not the first time that Dr. Hull has reset something in my mouth on a show day. So
what are you biting into, rocks?
I mean, he might be timing it accordingly. I'm a little bit worried that maybe this is like a psyops campaign on his, where he's actually like putting things in my food, and then on a Monday I can say, oh well, I saw Dr. Hull again. Well, you just saw him. You've been seeing him every time. What's up with you? So yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. I was actually using my water pick to answer your question. I wasn't even eating anything.
Really?
So I said, well, I guess I shouldn't be doing that. He didn't like that idea, but no, glad we could to chat about a bunch of things. We got to preview the Jethro lineup here a little bit because Wednesday, for the folks, unfortunately, that were looking for the sports professor, he's still on the mend. So you will have a familiar voice here on Wednesday. I'll be covering the show. We're putting it together as we speak, but we got a couple good guests coming on. We'll be covering a lot of. We got more stuff to cover. We'll start out the series here with the Pistons. We'll see what happens with the Tigers. I know Steve's buddy Mark Dewey was going to come on to talk about the Scooble stuff and all that. So we'll cover that 7 and 9 on Wednesday. And then Thursday, 7 to 9, we got Shane Graham's Extra Points. Shane will be in studio. Hopefully we'll be talking with Rob Rubik about the upcoming FOP game. I always like those games where they play against the police or the fire department, and they have a lot of the old Lions. Rob's a regular in those in those games. And then what do we got on Saturday? We got Polka Pops. And then we got a nice little show after Polka Pops, and I'm not talking about Polka Overtime. We got the All Request show, and I don't know why it's been stuck in my head, Jeff, but me asking you if you would play Enya on your show just keeps running through my head. You probably wanted to forget it, but I have made several Enya references on the show. I think that's going to be on our bingo card.
That could be on your bingo card, but it won't be heard on Saturday night.
No,
unfortunately.
I don't want to scare people away from the show. You won't have to listen to Enya if you're not an Enya fan. If you are an Enya fan, hey, maybe if I want to chill out the bumpers eventually,
there you go.
We go all Enya.
There you go.
How about that?
That's exactly what you do. Now, Saturday night, big announcement. For those of you who listen on Saturday night,
I love it.
Big announcement. Don't want to miss it Saturday.
I love it. That's a huge tease. That
is a radio
That's
tease.
what they call a tease in radio. That's why we got Jeff here. I'm talking about
a big tease. Yes.
I'm talking about Enya. He's actually doing radio. I'm just still talking about Enya. What do you think Scott would do if I said, "Hey Scott, you know the Scandinavian metal that I have in my bumpers? Can I change that to all Enya?" I feel like
I want to be in that room. Just let me be in the room or with you when you do that.
If he's listening, my pocket's gonna buzz in just a second here. So we'll see if our fearless leader is listening. But no, tune into all that. I'm excited about the announcement. I'm going to be tuned in.
I'm looking forward to it.
For the announcement here. And obviously, I sometimes skip them. I never mean to, but we got to listen to the daytime guys here. You got to listen to Conrad's Country Bunker and the Rowdy Ride Home. I haven't talked to Conrad in a while. I got to talk to him here, but I know he's doing better. But listen to both those guys, and good lineup. So is there anything more that you can tease? Can you eliminate some things that it's not? Can you say the tease is not an all Enya show?
It's not an all Enya show
hosted by Ryan Walsh. We don't need any more shows hosted by Ryan Walsh. So thank goodness it's not that.
No, it's going to be a very listener-friendly, listener-involved announcement.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. Is the listener. So
it's only Monday too.
That's
got a long ways to wait.
Now the internet's going to be buzzing about what this is.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be trending here soon before we're off the air.
Yeah, we have so many things that trend from this show. Otherwise, Enya would be trending if that was the case. But
think of the things that would be trending.
Cobblers. Yep. Lethal Weapon. Enya. Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you putting up with us, and have a great week. Until next week, stay informed and stay vigilant.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Core, the West Michigan Sports Commission.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.